Hello, my name is Sister Maureen Baldwin. I'm a sister of the Congregation of Notre-Dame of Montreal. I would like to take some time today to reflect on the life of our founders, St. Marguerite Bourgeois, through the lens of the call to holiness. The universal call to holiness is an invitation, a challenge to each one of us to be holy by living our lives with love and bearing witness to God's love by the way in which we live our ordinary everyday life. To be so rooted in God that our actions and our words attract others to turn toward God. In his papal encyclical on the call to holiness, Pope Francis offers the Beatitudes as the model for all Christians to use on the journey toward holiness. He specifically mentions a group of 5 spiritual attitudes that he believes are necessary if we are to understand this way of life to which the Lord calls us. First, perseverance, patience, and meekness. Second, joy and a sense of humor. Third, boldness and passion. Fourth, in community. And finally, in constant prayer. When we look to the life of St. Marguerite Bourgeois, we see a life that reflects these very attitudes in her daily efforts to serve God and neighbor. Marguerite Bourgeois, and many of the depictions of her early life, paint her as a vibrant young woman filled with spirit, passion, and love for life. She belonged to the French bourgeoisie class and lived in what was considered to be a middle-class family. She was the 7th of 13 children. She referred to herself as frivolous and very popular with other girls, which meant that she was very social and a very active young girl and enjoyed some of the things that most women enjoy. However, as time goes on to show, Marguerite was a woman of great substance who possessed a depth that provided her with wisdom beyond her years. A wisdom, one might say, was comparable to the great mystics that would eventually lead her on a faith-filled journey that would mark her place forever as a great pioneer woman, instrumental in the development of the Canadian frontier, a pioneer whose courage, perseverance, patience, and faith would lead her to revolutionize the delivery of education in Canada and to help redefine the role of religious women in the Church of the New World. As I mentioned, Marguerite enjoyed the possessions and distractions of young girl. She was one of the in crowd. She liked to be with her friends, wearing her nice clothes, but at the age of 20, all that would change in a matter of moments. During a religious procession in 1640, she glanced at a statue of Mary and felt something within her change. I found myself so moved and so changed that I no longer recognized myself. And she noted that others noticed as well. She goes on to say, "From that moment, I gave up my pretty clothes and withdrew from the world to give myself to the service of God." Marguerite had experienced a profound transformation, an experience of God that would give a new direction to her life. For Marguerite, this was a very significant moment of change as it opened the eyes of her soul to a whole new world beyond her middle-class upbringing. She was ready to face the world with passion and enthusiasm, and she finally accepted the challenge being offered by the Sisters of the Congrégation of Notre-Dame, a cloistered order of sisters in Troyes, to become a sister in their extern congregation. So Marguerite, with the encouragement and assistance of the sisters, went out to teach the poor children of Troyes, the children that the cloistered sisters could not reach. Marguerite proved to be so good at teaching that it wasn't long before she was entrusted to become the leader of the group of small teachers. This group not only taught, they prayed together and did volunteer work together, such as visiting the sick and families of the parish. she had, at long last, discovered a group of like-minded, prayerful young women who were dedicated to service and the needs of the common good. As her skill and confidence were building, her faith in God deepened. Marguerite decided to give her services to God, and now she was ready to give her life. She asked to enter the Carmelite sisters and was turned down. Likewise with another group of sisters. It was a devastating blow to Marguerite, as she truly felt called by God. Father Antoine Gendré, her spiritual director, shared with Marguerite his vision of a new type of community to imitate the life of the Virgin Mary. The statue and the state of the light of the journeying Virgin Mary, which must also be honored, was not yet filled. Even without veil or wimple, one could be a true religious. This sounded most attractive to Marguerite, the woman of action, engaged in service to others. To go out as Mary had gone out to her cousin Elizabeth and to the disciples during the Pentecost, bringing the good news of God's love. It was also during this deep time of discernment that Marguerite received an invitation from Paul de Chaumet de Maisonneuve, the founder and governor of Ville-Marie, to go to New France, to become the teacher of the colony. Marguerite was not sure what to do with this request, and so she sought out the advice of others. Upon sharing her dilemma with Father Gendré, he replied, "What God has not willed in Troyes, he will perhaps bring to pass in Montreal." She approached others for advice, namely her confessor and the Vicar General, and all affirmed her call to this new world. So, after patiently waiting for God to reveal the path to her, in 1653, Marguerite left her native Troyes and set sail for Montreal under the protection and guiding assurance of the Virgin Mary. "Go, I will not abandon you." When Marguerite first arrived in Montreal, she was confronted with the reality that there were no children old enough to teach. So she was, in fact, like many in today's society, unemployed and needing to find meaningful work, shelter, and food. She was dedicated to making a difference in the colony and thus began what we would call volunteering, using her many skills in whatever area of the colony was in need the most. She looked after the governor's house, and Exchange was given a place to stay. She worked closely with Jean Mas, a Hotel Dieu sister, who was to become her great friend. Eventually, she was given an abandoned stable by the authorities in which to live and teach. And she earned her food by doing laundry and household tasks for her neighbors, who generously shared from their meager supplies. Marguerite had her faith and her love for the people. She understood them, and she was one of them. It was only fitting that she too should live like them. Marguerite's passion and love for life were contagious, and she was often referred to as the mother of the colony. She believed that God had a very personal call for her to bring the good news of God's love to all. She befriended the colonists, ate with them, laughed with them, cried with them, and helped them when it was needed. And she always provided a listening and comforting ear. Recognizing her desire to pray with and be in community and service with others, in 1658, Marguerite accompanied Jean Mas on a trip to France to attract some new companions of like mind to join her in Ville-Marie. She returned with 4 very capable and diverse women: Catherine Collot, Marie Raison, Edmée Chatel, and Annie Hugh. The sisters lived and taught in the stable school and earned their keep by sewing and doing laundry at night. Marguerite was adamant that the Congrégation de Notre-Dame would be self-sufficient, which meant that any woman who came could join the congregation, even without a dowry, which was required to enter any cloistered order. Marguerite was grounded in the belief that all children should have access to education. She was not content to teach only the children of the colony when she knew that others could benefit from the wealth of experience, expertise, and love of God present in her group of capable companions. Being among the people was very dear to the heart of Marguerite, and she was delighted when Bishop Laval, the apostolic vicar of New France, during his visit to Ville-Marie in 1669, gave authorization for the teachers of Ville-Marie to instruct on the Ile de Montreal and in all other places in Canada that should ask for their services. She had already begun an outreach mission, sending sisters out in pairs to teach the native children on the margins in bark cabins. She also accepted the challenge and responsibility for the king's wards, who were usually orphaned young women sent to New France to be married and settled into the colony. Marguerite not only cared for these young women and taught them how to run a household, but she also interviewed the prospective husbands. She was indeed the mother of the colony. In her response to the call to holiness, Marguerite boldly persevered and crossed many societal boundaries, giving significant meaning to the new in New France. She had crossed the Atlantic as a single woman, alone without a cent to her name. She was able to secure a building in which to run a free school and also house the community of sisters that she would go on to found. She crossed the Atlantic 2 more times in her life, once to bring more companions to Montreal, and then finally to obtain the letters to officially found this small congregation. Marguerite lived her faith through her total reliance on God, her teaching, her many journeys, and her relationships with others. A woman of courage, courageous service, deeply rooted in prayer and discernment, who went out in imitation of Mary, bearing the love of God. In his homily during the canonization of Saint Marguerite Bourgeois on October 31st, 1982, Pope John Paul II began by saying, "As regards Saint Marguerite Bourgeois, we welcome above all her original contribution to the promotion of families, children, future spouses, and parents." In this one statement, he touches on the expansive list of educational endeavors that Marguerite undertook in her lifetime in Canada. She was not content to simply stay within the confines of the traditional classroom, but risked going out to those on the margins and beyond the boundaries of the colony to bring education to the most needy and deprived. John Paul II continued on to say, "This work of being a schoolmistress for the populace, she performed with great competence, without making any distinction between the Indian girls and the daughters of the colonists. She esteemed them all as very precious." Indeed, this sense of equality of persons, regardless of sex, race, age, and socioeconomic state, is, I believe, one of Marguerite's greatest contributions to both education and ministry today. Her model of teaching and service with impartiality provides us with a solid pedagogy to apply in our extremely diverse classrooms and places of mission and ministry. It allows others who receive this kind of respect and treatment to learn a valuable lesson and hopefully go forth and do the same. The lesson is the intrinsic worth and value of every person they meet. I'd like to say a bit about the Congregation of Notre-Dame today. Needless to say that the boundaries and size of the Congregation of Notre-Dame of Marguerite's time have grown substantially to become an international congregation involving sisters and lay associates all over the world. Following the footsteps of Saint Marguerite, these sisters and associates of the Congregation of Notre-Dame are women and men of the gospel, going forward in the spirit of the Visitation Pentecost spirit, bringing the message of God's love to all we encounter. Marguerite's greatest desire was that the great precept of the love of God above all things and love of neighbor as oneself be written in every heart. Like Marguerite, we promote the equality of persons and celebrate God's great gift of diversity of people. Rooted in Jesus Christ, in love and compassion, we, CND sisters and associates, through the process of contemplative dialogue, dare to live interculturality, to face our fears and vulnerabilities together, to be open to and celebrate the diversity of generations, cultures, attitudes, and structures. We dare to go beyond the peripheries in a spirit of mutual collaboration, responding to the hopes and the cries of our wounded world. We dare to honor and respect our common home, to take concrete actions to resist the forces of destruction and promote life in all its forms. As liberating educators, we work to develop and promote a more just and inclusive world. Sisters and associates throughout the congregation engage in a variety of ministries to answer these very needs. Some of these ministries include teaching in schools, universities, facilitating retreats, spiritual direction, ministry with women, chaplaincy in universities and hospitals, volunteering in street shelters and soup kitchens, prison ministry, promotion of family, ministry with homeless, addicted, abused, and marginalized people, members of boards, volunteers, ministry with dioceses, social justice ministry, climate action and care of the earth, and positions of leadership which are integral to the congregation and moving forward. All of these are just some of the various endeavors in which the sisters and associates of the congregation bring the love of Marguerite, the love of God, to others, to expand our common good, to grow that community of love which she herself so desired to implant in the hearts of others. Like Marguerite, when she came to Ville-Marie in 1653, we sisters and associates respond to the needs of the time. We answer the call and do what needs to be done in order to share God's love with the world today. Like Mary, we continue to go out in visitation with others, to go out in Pentecost in words of evangelization, sharing, and faith. And we engage with others where they are in their own need. I'd like to share with you a little bit of my own call and my journey with Marguerite in my life. As a young woman who grew up in a large Celtic Catholic family, I was literally raised in the public. So therefore, I felt a great attraction to be someone of service. I was taught by sisters and knew them from my parish, but my own reflection on the possibility of entering this type of a lifestyle did not emerge more clearly for me until later in high school years. At a day treat at my high school, I was given a book on the life of St. Marguerite Bourgeois, and immediately I found a kindred spirit. I was so engaged in her passion for life and her focus on working with and being with others that it was touching something at the very core of who I was. I could resonate with Marguerite's experience of feeling a profound transformation beginning to occur within her. I was experiencing a similar thing happening in my life. But as young, frivolous women become, university life intervened. And so I went off to university, and the busyness of university life took over the social aspects, all of the things that happen in the university world. But yet, there continued to be this deep desire within me for something more spiritual. I knew that something was lacking in my life. And having come from a deeply rooted religious Catholic family where prayer was so important to our everyday life, I recognized that I needed to be with people who could help me to grow spiritually as a person. So I joined a folk choir. I joined the Newman prayer group. I also joined a reflection prayer group in my dean in my college dwelling. Finally, under the guidance of the dean of my residence, I obtained a spiritual director, a Scarborough Foreign Missions priest, as it happened to be, who was a wonderful man who helped me to spend a lot of good quality time and process praying and reflecting over the direction of my life and to discern more clearly what my call might be. I attended discernment weekends to learn about various congregations and their works throughout the different dioceses of Atlantic Canada. But I kept coming back to Marguerite and to the visitation experience. It was there that I felt most at home. Even in visiting sisters of different communities, there was always something within me that drew me back to Marguerite's group, that there was a comfort and ease and at homeness that I felt within me. Today, Marguerite's spirit continues to speak to me and guide my steps as I strive to respond to the call to holiness. She provides me with the courage and the passion similar to what she had when she set out in her new journeys. The sisters and the community which I share my life are the women and men whom I turn to for support, encouragement, as we move forward in the call to holiness together. In 2008, when I was attending a congregational meeting in Marguerite's hometown of Troyes, I reflected on what it would have taken for me to have the courage to board that ship to cross the Atlantic. But it occurred to me that as gospel people, we are always on a journey. Perhaps not across the Atlantic, but across many other borders and boundaries in our own lives, moving away from attitudes, biases, consumerism, ways of excluding others, and etc. And then moving towards God, God's love, mercy, compassion, and embracing justice for all. Perhaps Marguerite is speaking to you and inviting you to come and join the journey. So ask yourself, what would it take for you to risk crossing the oceans you need to cross in your own way?